Don't pay a quarter, don't pay a dime, don't pay a penny, don't waste your time. If half a penny is all he asks, don't give him any. Lay off his tracks, my half a penny is what he'll say. Still a steep price, just walk away.
Good morning, Hit Nation, folks, forgets and everything in between and beyond. My name is Roy, the host of Mahapanies and the host of these PennyQuickies. Please follow us at Mahapanies on Facebook and Mahapanies1 on Instagram. I'm just supposed to say this. I don't always open the videos explaining why, but the only reason I wear this mask is because of a minor health issue that I'd rather you to see me in this mask than to actually see my face. I used to always say, I never know what I'm talking about and so forth, but I think that's kind of self-understood at this point. I'm kind of living on to also missing on a lot of details because of my ADHD and always living it out there, right? Oh my God, poor guy has ADHD. No, that's not even the point. But yes, last time we spoke, I couldn't record for a few days, but last time we spoke was right before the game against the Celtics. A game that everybody was very surprised to start a game because we opened up with about we had a 20 point lead almost from the get-go. They were shooting 5-10%. From the field, and then of course everybody knew that the run was coming. What we didn't know is that the run was coming to the point in which we would again, for the 31st time since last season, blow a double point lead, a double point digit lead, and a 21 point lead at that, to lose to the Celtics by 2 points right after the trade deadline, right? So what else can you say about that? And then, of course, we are so back because we destroyed the Wizards yesterday, even though we were trailing by 9, an average of 7 to 9 points for basically 10 minutes of the game. And then that's it, as it pertains particularly to the game yesterday against the Wizards. But again, as Ethan Skolnick and all the good folks at 5 Reasons Sports say, we have 11 games. This was one of 11 games left in the season against teams that are purposely tanking. Tonight is going to be against another one, and then we play the Memphis, right? That's the last one away before we go on the All-Star break. But just to make things very clear before we go on this All-Star break, obviously the way that we played against the Wizards stands out. The Wizards are just bad. They turned the ball over a lot. They missed a lot of their shots. They just started shooting from, I think, 65% to below 40% at some point. And of course, we destroyed them, The plus minuses, of course, they look great, right? Because we have a plus 41 for Bam Adebayo with 22 points. We have a 0 for Aaron Gardner with 10 points. We have a plus 1 for Wiggins with 11 points. We have a plus 7 for Powell with 21 points. We have a plus 16 for Davion Mitchell with 5 points. We have a plus 9 for Jaime Jaquez Jr. with 4 points. We have a plus 22 for Khalil Ware with 19 points. A plus 33 for Simone Fontecchio. Turn things around, Simone Fontecchio, with 12 points. As far as Kuchonis, plus 27 with 22 points. And then Demir Young, a minus 1. He just played 8 minutes with 2 points. Nikola Jovic had a 0 with 4 points. He played under 6 minutes, and Drew Smith played under 6 minutes. We can talk a little bit about the box charts just to kind of see what's happening. There was one lead change, right? Longest run was 12, of course, by us. 32 was the biggest lead. We ended 132-101. We ended with 60 rebounds, almost 20 more rebounds to their 42, 34 assists to their 23, 18 steals to their 7, 5 blocks to their 6, 16 turnovers. That's not a good number. But again, it's the Wizards. The Wizards are forgiving of turnovers. 16 turnovers against any decent team. This is not the score. In the end, 19 turnovers to the Wizards, 47% from the field, 41.9, almost 42% to them. Almost 45% from 3-point, 33% to them. 86%, almost 87% from the free throw, and almost 70% for them. Points to the paint, they had 54 against their 40. We had 31 second chance points versus their 14. And we had 26 fast break points versus their 11. So again, what can we say about this game? So the first observation, obviously, the first thing that we have to say is we're playing against teams for tanking. So obviously, everybody kind of starts to think, it's not everybody, but mainly Five Reasons Sports and other people talk about the very obvious, why are we allowing teams to tank? So I actually have a solution. No, I don't. But look, when I start talking about what I'm going to talk about, you're going to see how absurd it is when Americans want to change soccer. Because again, I come from a background of soccer, right? My team actually lost yesterday against our arch nemesis Palmeiras, right? Corinthians is my team. We lost 1-0 to Palmeiras yesterday. The goal came at the very end of the match, so imagine how boring it must have been compared, for example, the Super Bowl, in which they had a few. They had the game was not was very very boring up to a certain point. I mean, to me, honestly, I didn't even watch the full game. But the point is this: it might sound crazy, but I think the NBA has enough money to create an in between league, like a second division. The G League is too. The G League has too much of a set function to work as a second division. But hear me out on this, okay? What if not about the draft, because people are talking about draft, and of course they know what they're talking about. Let them say that. I'm going to speak my version of what my solution to the tanking is. The worst two teams of the East, the worst two teams of the West, plus four more teams, four new franchises go to the second division, and they battle for the top four to go back to the NBA in the next season. So what you do is you basically kind of always have the 15th. No, yeah, you kind of take it down to 13 teams, right? 13 teams, because you have kind of four that have to be established there in the bottom in the second division, and those in the second division don't get a draft pick. They lose their draft pick. They abdicate their draft pick. It doesn't mean that they lose it necessarily, but it means that they lose it until they come back. God knows how this would function. And you are talking a little bit to Meep here, but regardless, honestly, if there is any kind, and of course the draft is the most rational one, but there isn't an incentive to win in an 82 game journey, and that is just catastrophes. Catastrophes. It's very similar to what happens in soccer when you have a league, right? In the United States, guys don't understand what is a pure league, right? A pure league means it's just wins and losses. There's no playoffs. That's it. This is what renders a champion, right? Whoever comes out in the East and the West would battle. Maybe there would be one thing that would be like the only thing, right? The number one the East against the number one the West. That's the only game played. Final, but not even that. A league. There's no East. There's no West. There are 20 teams. The first team after 38 games is the one that wins. Obviously, this is not what I'm advocating for here, but what I'm basically trying to say is that in those leagues, it kind of gets boring after a certain time because you kind of know which teams are never going to get to a certain point and which teams are never going to fall to a certain point. And so but you have those teams in the bottom trying to not go to the second division. Those that don't have anything to play for, they're not going to go to the second division. They're not going to go up. That's when it kind of becomes boring, but we don't have this situation in the NBA. What we have in the NBA is a lack of incentive for players not to finish last. And not only that, but a reward for them to finish last, which was a very good idea if you think about it. But I liked it. I don't know who said it. Somebody said it. I might find it on Twitter, probably not. But he said that, he or she said that, the best thing is that the first pick goes to the first team that loses in the play-in, right? The second pick goes to the second team that loses in the play-in. And then so on and so forth until you kind of go back to the top. Because otherwise, right, you have teams like the Wizards in which they cannot, like, I think that if, had they kind of sustained a particular lead, especially shooting the three, had we been more, have we not been able to capitalize on their turnovers, right, versus what they did to us, that would have been a more serious game, but that wasn't a serious game. It's not serious to play against the Wizards. However, that's why we say it's a trap game, because if they come to a certain point in which they feel they're winning, The Utah Jazz does not mind getting to 17 wins, right? The Utah Jazz right now is 17-37. We face them tonight at 7:30 p.m. They're 17-37. They're 13th in the West. They'll be the last people standing without a second division. They're sixth in points per game. Very interesting. 118 points average. They are 14th in rebounds per game, about 44. They're second in assists per game, 30.1, which was our number for a while. They are 30th in opponents' points allowed per game at 126.7, whereas we are 8th in the East, 28-26. We lost two consecutive, right? Hence Atlanta, then the Celtics, and then we 2K'd the Wizards. We are 3 points per game, 30 points per game, sorry, 119.7. Rebounds per game, we're second with almost 47. We're 6 in assists per game. We fell a bit, but not considerably, almost 29. Opponents' points allowed per game, we are a little bit up, 21st, 117.3. So this is what the game is going to be today, right? About basically against a tanking team. So again, second division, hear me out. Second division would work. That's one of the ideas that I have. Seriously, look, I would implement certain things to soccer to make it better for Americans to watch, but not just for Americans. I understand, for example, lack of substitution, lack of unrestricted substitution, or a lack of a structure to actually make changes, game plans, adjustments, and so on and so forth in a soccer game. But it would change what soccer is, right? It would be the same as changing the concept of how basketball is played, and you don't want that. But changing the format of the league has happened in several countries with soccer, which is the most traditional sport in the world. And for several countries, it's religion. So, yeah, definitely it's time for the NBA to reconsider this 82-game BS. Definitely it's time for the NBA to reconsider the idea that the last one gets the first pick, because, yes, tanking on purpose, which the NBA said they would punish. But how can you prove, But, for example, one of the questions that the main question that I asked you last time was whether you would rather be the Wizards, which is a very bad example, I said, because the Wizards have been there for quite some time. But be the Pistons before the Pistons came here, right? Be the Pelicans for a few years now. Be the Thunder before a couple of years ago, and so forth. I asked if you prefer that or you prefer being the Miami Heat that we got to, in the span of 6 years or 7 years right now, counting this season, we got to 3 CFs and 2 finals. But we didn't. Like I said, I talked about this last time. What do I prefer? That's the part that I think that people assumed that I prefer being in a team, and I do. Okay, I prefer. Look, many NBA teams don't even know what a trophy is. Many NBA teams they seem to just be there as punch bags, right? Punching bags, like we say in box. What do you call it? Gatekeepers, right? Like we say in boxing. So, just teams that are there to just kind of fill out things, but they're not really serious. That's not the case of the Jazz. It's the case of the Jazz this season, but that has been the case of the Wizards. Although in the past seasons, I've seen pretty close games and losses against the Wizards in this particular situation. So that doesn't mean that they are never going to win. It just means that it's not, it's a team that's tanking on purpose. But do I want to tank on purpose? And then I think Amir, right, from King to Beat, said something that I agree with him. If it means playing the young guys, as opposed to, for example, right, we just saw right now that Davion Mitchell is going to play as a starting point guard. He's doing a great job this season. It's undeniable. But we want to see more of Kaz. So I'm sorry, Drew Smith. Beautiful story, but it's time for you to help perhaps another team. And obviously, it's not exactly what's happening right now, but this is more or less my sentiment, right? It's time for Kaz to play more minutes. And yes, it's true. I've been discussing with Raf since the beginning of the season. Raf is very critical where Raf wants Ware out of the team. Whereas I am more of a person who I think Ware had really excellent numbers. Ware has never been more impactful on court than he was off court. I don't know about last night, but even in the winning stints, it was always like a +1 with him on the court and a +7, 8, 9, 10 with him off court. But yesterday we saw the benefits of that. I don't know if that's something that Spo is going to run again. It's a very typical way of making a game of playing a game against the Wizards, basically, right? This is like, especially once you kind of acquire, I don't know, over a double-digit lead right there in the beginning of the second quarter. So it becomes more interesting to see the youngsters play. And yes, definitely less of Jovic at this point. Definitely less of Jovic. I'm not saying Drew Smith is bad, but I'm saying we know that Cavs has a higher ceiling. Yes, it's important for us to win. It's important. Right now, it's not as important for us to win. Right now, it's important for us to. I don't know what it is, but would I rather? Going back to the topic at hand, would I rather be on watching my team lose year after year? So coming from a soccer background, I've watched my team, just like many other teams in the NBA that are punchbacks, that are gatekeepers, that just exist, that never won a title, that are almost never in contention for title. I've seen a time in which, from the moment that I was born until maybe when I was 10 years old, I believe, Corinthians hadn't won anything for 20 years at that point almost, right? As a soccer team, like I said. So imagine rooting for a team with all of your heart and passion, and that team just not not being not we have at least the opportunity of 3 to 4 championships a year. That time about 2 to 3 championships a year, and Corinthians had none for 20 plus years. I think almost 30 years. I have to kind of recap because now, whereas I used to be able to quote those things off the top of my head, right now my brain is scrambled more with the NBA. So I've seen how that feels like, and honestly, it doesn't feel very great. But Jablonka advocates for something more like a softer build or something less dramatic. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a person that's knowledgeable. What I know is this: this team is not good enough. Okay, this team is not good enough to compete for anything. Can this team surprise us and get further than or farther than the first round of the playoffs? Yes, they can. Will they do that? Likely not. Likely not. Let's just be realistic here. Can they do it? Yeah, depending on everything, they can. But the Magic owned us throughout the entire season. I mean, and preseason. So let's say we end up in a playing spot against the Magic. We're, come on, like it's going to be hard, right? So definitely there has to be something in the future more than just continuing with the same core and rinsing and repeating in another 5-6 years, getting somebody like Jimmy Butler to come back and help us to get to the ECF and a couple of NBA finals in which we were really, really contenders only in one, and we were the biggest contenders in one. We didn't make the finals, which was the one that we lost against the Celtics in the ECF. So anyway, I talked too much, but that's my view. My view is that I prefer doing something than not doing anything. Whether that's I don't want to see I don't want to see seasons in which we are we win 14 to 20 games, but I would willing to see a couple of seasons if that means that we would actually have a chance of building assets and building our own draft picks. But that's not the philosophy. It's not going to happen. They're going to try to play their hardest. So it's completely useless to talk about that. And I'm advocating something that I'm against, which is tanking. I don't want to see people tanking, right? Anyway, today, Normal Powell is day to day. Has a hand injury, may not play. Phil Larson's day to day with an elbow injury. Was out yesterday. Tyler Hero was ruled out already with a rib injury. The Rozier NBA cover up. And for the Jazz, Keyonte George is out with an ankle injury. And Elijah Harkless is out with a hamstring injury. I don't think anybody else is out. I don't think I'm missing anything else. Nope. Stay safe, stay dry, stay as happy as possible in this very complicated world of ours. I spoke too much today, and let's go Heat.